guys, this is Tonisha Fanchon with All the Preacher's Wives. We need you. 20 ladies with 20 stories. It's going to be so epic, this book, to help other ladies that are coming into the ministry, that are going to be marrying into the ministry. They need you. We need your stories. Contact me at allthepreacherswives.com or hit me on the ground at allthepreacherswives. DM me. We need you ladies. Let's go.
Hello, this is Tonisha Fanchon with All the Preacher's Wives. We are doing our first interview with Melanie, and that weekend is going to be so epic to build a sisterhood. On Friday, the ladies are coming in. They're going to be flying in from all over the country. It's going to be awesome to just meet all the other ladies and get their swag bag and just settle in and relax into this mini mansion that we're getting. It's going to be awesome. And then on that same day, they're going to be having a chef prepared dinner, which will be awesome. And then on Saturday, they're going to start off with a chef prepared breakfast. And then let's get those bodies working, ladies. We're going to be going on a little hike. After that, we get to eat again with the 3 fondue lunch. And then comes the group interview, just a candid conversation. We'll just be talking about various things, getting those conversations going and just talking to each other and sharing stories. After that will be the fun night. We'll be having, some more food. We all love food, right? We love to eat. And we'll be having night and just enjoying each other and just continuing the conversation, having a nice time. And then on Sunday, again, we'll just have a little light breakfast, chef prepared, of course, and be chartered to the Potter's house. Have a wonderful time of worship and fellowship and just praising the Lord, which we always have to be doing with our whole lives, right? Glorifying God. And then after that, back to the mini, and we will be eating a chef prepared lunch. Back to your lives, to your regular lives, to your various places in the country. All right, so let's get to this interview. Let's welcome Melanie, which is our first lady preacher's wife or candidate. We'll fix that. I don't know. But that we're interviewing.
Get ready for All the Preacher's Wives, an anthology and celebration weekend hosted by Tonisha Fanchon, November 11th through the 13th. It's a peek behind the curtain of being a pastor's wife. We're looking for 20 pastors' wives to share their story. So if you are a pastor's wife who is interested in contributing to the book and joining us for the celebration weekend, contact us now at www.allthepreacherswives.com. Space unlimited. Again, www.allthepreacherswives.com.
Okay. So welcome, Melanie. You are our first. How are you today?
Good evening. I'm well. How are you guys doing today? You look beautiful.
Thankful that you chose to be a part of All the Preacher's Wives. Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that worked in my favor is that I'm not a current preacher's wife. I'm a former preacher's wife. So a lot of the things that I have experienced, I want to help other people who may be in that situation to understand how to handle different situations that may arise. So that was one of my pushes to be a part of this event.
So you said former. So how long ago were you a preacher's wife?
5 years ago now. 2017 was when I walked away from the marriage. I was about to say the ministry, but the ministry lasts your whole life. So I walked away from the marriage, but the ministry continues.
So take us back, because I was going to say, like, why did you walk away from the marriage? But even before that, kind of what led to you walking away, and what's your story of being a preacher's wife?
Well, I guess I think I want to start with what the story about the preacher's wife, and then I'll
Okay.
end with that because it's all like culminates. I was a young lady, 20 years old, when I got married to who I thought was the man of my life, the joy of my life. Um, we were both in college and exploring life, and he was not a minister at the time, so I didn't have the vision of, okay, one day I'll be a preacher's wife, even though his father was a minister. um so we were just enjoying life and living, and then one day he came to me and he was like, I've been called to the ministry. And I was like, who called? Because what I was experiencing was not, what I envisioned a minister's life should be like. And I was like, we're still young.
Mm.
Um, I was actually like 25 years old. And I was like, who called? And I really didn't understand what all was involved at that time. Now, I had been a church girl. My dad was the head deacon and had later become a minister after I got out of the house and got married. I didn't push him to become a minister though. But my dad became a minister after I got married. And so I knew the church and I had a relationship with God, but um, in my mind growing up, I pedestalized ministers. I
Mm.
thought these people are the closest thing to God. And this man that I'm married to, that I'm enjoying life with and having fun with, he's supposed to be one of them. And it was
Mm.
hard for me at the beginning of him accepting his ministry. Um, it created problems, not so much me not wanting to give up a particular lifestyle. I just the pedestal that I had put ministers on, I just didn't think that we fit that pedestal.
Oh, okay.
And it was hard for me. And it was hard for me. And I know I'm going to get raw and relevant in this interview.
Yeah, definitely,
um
definitely.
it was hard for me to even be intimate with him. I told him I could not, because he was a preacher now. So that was like
Mm.
holy to me. And what I was seeing didn't match up. So it was hard for me to even be intimate with him for a while because of that, newly found calling. But as I worked with the people in the church, he was associate pastor under a few different people, a few different congregations, seeing the different people, getting to know them. I'm a people person. So I naturally just fell into, okay, let me see what my role is in the church. What can I do? And it became part of me to minister to people, to help people, to listen to them. And even though he had accepted his calling into the ministry, it was a calling for both of us. I didn't understand it at the beginning. I thought, oh, that's just him. Somebody called him. Somebody picked up the phone and said something to him. Nobody said anything to me, but it was a beckoning from within that made me want to do the things that I wanted to do for the people in the church and the congregation. And as our ministry grew, people they saw us as the perfect unit. Um, Now, I was married for 23 years. So as those
It's a
years
long time.
progressed, yes, yes, yes. As those years progressed, I found myself becoming more involved in the church and less involved in the marriage, because the marriage wasn't aligning itself up with what I was seeing in the church. Um,
So, Melanie, real quick, when you were saying that what you were seeing wasn't what the picture that you had of what a pastor's life would be or what a
Mhm.
pastor was. So how does that parallel or not, I guess not parallel, because what does that mean? Like what you were seeing was not what you were thinking a pastor should be or a pastor's life should be. What does that mean exactly?
I was a domestic abuse survivor. My spouse abused me mentally, financially, emotionally, and it was all done at home where nobody else could see it. Well, I thought nobody else could see it. I thought I was hiding it well. But at the church, he was the perfect spouse. He was the perfect uh, pastor. Everybody
Yes.
thought the world of us. Everybody. And
Thought you
only
were the
the
perfect
ones that,
couple.
yes, only the ones that saw us on a day-to-day basis could tell the difference. But
Mm,
I just thought I was masking it well. And when he would stand up in front of people and proclaim to have faith in God and trust God, and then come home and treat me the way he treated me, curse me and stuff, I was like, you can't praise God with the same mouth that you cursing me with.
mm.
And it just didn't line up for me at all. Um, it became more of a business type thing for him, and I didn't see church as a business. Um, he would schedule himself to be out of town or to do something, uh, and on Bible study nights. And I thought Bible study was like one of the most important parts of the ministry because you get to interact with the congregation on a interpersonal basis. So he would get to the point where he just wanted to cancel Bible study, and I was like, no, that's the most important part. So I used to always critique his paper, his sermons, and edit them for him. Um, so I just said, okay, if you can't do Bible study, I'll write it for you, and all you have to do is teach it. And
Mm.
it started out as me writing the Bible studies out for him, and him teaching it, and then it became me teaching the Bible studies because he would be busy doing something else. So um, I just started becoming more involved in the ministry, and um, that's why I found myself more involved in the church than in the actual marriage because he would go and do other things, and I was usually at home alone.
Do you think there was any resentment that was built because of how you saw the ministry going and how it should be, and then how, like, what he was doing and kind of, how he saw it?
Well, I did not show any resentment toward him. I may have felt it in my heart, but I
Or
didn't
even him
show it.
towards you?
Um, that's kind of hard to say because his mistreatment of me started before he announced his calling to the ministry, which is why I questioned it at the beginning. Um, his mistreatment of me started like after the second year of marriage and after the fifth year. Because after the second year, I had told God, because I had a great relationship with God at the time. And after the second year, I had told God, I already had attempted suicide at the beginning. And so when when I realized after the second year, I told God, I said, okay, please change him because
Mm,
I I had a vision of what he could be like. He was a wonderful person when when he chose to be wonderful. I mean, one of the best people that you could ever be around, and people loved him, and people listened to him, and I saw such great potential in him. But
mhm.
when he didn't care, when he didn't care, and he didn't mind letting you know that. Um, and so I prayed to God to change him, Lord, change him, because this is not what I decided to marry. This is not what I envisioned for my life. And after year 5, and the changes weren't coming, I was like, okay, God, I can't do it anymore. And I caught myself bargaining with God. I said, God, if you help him, if you just let him get he was going to school to get a master's of divinity. And I said, if you let him go ahead and get that master's of divinity, I will stay with him until he gets it and until he's successful. And then I'll just slip away. Because I wanted him to be successful. I wanted
Right.
him, because people listen to him. I wanted him to draw people into the church, into God's ministry, because I believed in God's ministry. But it got to the point where every time he would go to school, he would get kicked out for some reason or another. And I was like, this is not going well. And within those 23 years, he never got that master's of divinity. And I was thinking, okay, it doesn't take a person that long to do this. It's a reason that God is holding back on this particular thing. So it came to a life and death situation where I had to actually leave the marriage, because I did attempt suicide once back in 2009. And I told God at that time, since he kept me here, that I knew I was here for a purpose, and I would use my voice to speak for the ones who couldn't speak for themselves. So now this book, this anthology, is giving me the opportunity to speak for some women who are going through those type of things, that can't say anything because maybe they're still in it, or maybe they don't know the things to say or how to get out. And I want to use my voice to be able to help them to understand that you don't have to stay in that situation, and it does not have to govern your ministry with God, because I am still connected with God, although I'm no longer connected with him.
So, what about with all of this? How is your family reacting? Like your mom and dad? I'm not sure if you have siblings, but how is your family reacting? Because you started off, getting married kind of young. I'm not sure. Did they know about how he was treating you, and then the ministry and how everything transpired? Like, how was that for your family?
Well, I thought I was masking it well. In the beginning, everybody thought we were the perfect couple. He everywhere we went, people used to call us Core and Brown, because he had a little David Mann kind of look. So they would call us Core and Brown because that's how we acted. And my family adored him at first. They loved him, but as the years progressed, they started seeing the jealousy within him, because he once confessed to me and told me, he said, I'm jealous of when your dad kisses you or your brother kisses you on the cheek. I don't want no man around you. So they
Mm.
started picking up on that, because when I would go home, he would limit my visits home. And when I would go home with him, um, after about 2 hours, and we lived 2 hours away from my parents. After about 2 hours, he's like, okay, I'm ready to go. But we live right next door to his parents, and he saw them all the time.
Mm.
So they started to see the difference. They started to see the mistreatment, but I naively thought that I was covering it up. I thought that nobody else was seeing what was happening to me. And it wasn't until I actually left the marriage um, that they told me that they actually saw this happening way before now. So even
Wow.
though they never voiced it to me and they never treated him any differently, they saw what he was doing. They just didn't invest themselves into the problem.
Hmm. So a lot of times in church, there's a lot of people that have the same type of thought that you had, as far as putting the pastor or the preacher like on a pedestal and
Mhm.
having, that type of perspective about them. So when you were married, did you feel like you had to keep how he treated you under wraps for the look, of
Yes.
being the perfect couple and all of
Yes.
that? And what would you say to other, because there's, when it comes to domestic violence, I mean, it happens. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter, you know your status, like your income level, or where you are. It happens across the board.
Mhm.
But with your position as a pastor's wife, did you just feel like you couldn't really reach out for any type of help, or did you think you needed help, or how was that part of it for you?
Well, I knew I needed help. Um, I, I think it was around 2011. I actually started going to see a counselor, and it was one that was paid for by my school. So he didn't have to pay anything. So it wasn't he didn't have an argument against it, um, because he limited what I could spend money on. Although I was working myself, and a lot of times he wasn't working. He controlled the finances. So since I had that outlet, I did see a counselor early on, and even the counselor told me, when you leave, pack up, have a bag packed, because you're going to have to leave in a hurry. You have to leave running. Um, I didn't find an outlet within the church, within the community, because we lived in the community in which he grew up. I didn't find an outlet that I felt comfortable going to talk to. So a lot of my emotions and my feelings, I did have to keep inside. When I was out in public, I did have to put on the first lady persona. Now, my actions toward them were not fake, because I genuinely love people and I love helping people. But my display of my emotions were fake, because I acted like I was in the happiest relationship that I could be in. And I was very supportive of everything that he did, because my father in law, who was also a pastor, had told me that if I displayed anything other than being happy and being um, satisfied in my situation, that it would tear up the church. It would cause a rift in the ministry. So I was careful about that, because one thing I did not want to do is disappoint God. I did not want to turn away any people from him. And even the first time we separated, it was a really big blow up, and he actually called some church members over to try to get them to rally with him. And I left. My parents actually put me on a flight to Houston, a one-way ticket to get me away from it. But I ended up coming back because of his threats toward my friends and family members. I felt like I was putting them in an unsafe situation. So I came back to keep other people from being harmed. And um, even when I left him, the church members reached out to me, and a lot of them told me, "We see what's going on, even though you don't show it. We know him. We knew him before we knew you. So we see what's going on, and hold your head up. You're gonna be just fine. And if you don't come back, it's understandable." And I couldn't fathom that. I couldn't fathom these churchgoers saying this about their pastor. And I was like, okay. And I kept hearing in my mind my ex father in law's voice, "You don't want to cause a rift in the church. You don't want to tear the church up." So I ended up coming back to him in 2014 and trying to make it work, but it didn't. I ended up, for the first time in my life, at 40 years old, yeah, right before my 41st birthday, um, I ended up getting pregnant. And I was like, "God, really?" So I started calling myself Sarah. But his mistreatment and his constant emotional drainage of me caused me to end up having 2 miscarriages within 1 year. And I was devastated. I was like, okay, God hates me this much, and I'm trying to do everything I can for the church, everything I can for this man who treats me like this. And God hates me this much, because the one thing I always wanted was children. And I never had any. So I was like, God didn't even see fit for me to be a mother, but he lets me teach children and mother the people in the church. So I was like, at that point, I got a little angry with God. And I I had a dog at the time, and he was the closest thing to me. And that relationship that I had with my dog reminded me of my relationship with God. And so I had to quickly reconcile, because that God was all I had at that time. I was trying to make this marriage seem like it was working. I was trying to make the ministry work, and I did not want God to be against me. So I did work hard to make the relationship with God work, but the relationship with the pastor, I couldn't, because it was going downhill, and it was going downhill fast. I just had nobody that I can turn to. So I did keep it to myself mostly. But I want to encourage women who are going through the same thing. Don't do that, because it drained me. It drained me so much that I had headaches, I had migraines, and I continuously had to keep going and keep doing. And it wasn't until I got to the point where I was about to leave that two of the parishioners came to me and said, "We see what's going on with you. We see how you're feeling. You need somebody to talk to. You can talk to us. We won't put your business out there. You can talk to us, but you can't keep holding that inside." And
So
that,
that brings up something, Melanie. Go ahead,
mm,
finish.
but that was the one thing that I needed, that I didn't recognize that I could have as a pastor's wife, is somebody to confide in. And that, I think, is important for all pastors' wives. Have a support system, because as you go through things within the church, you go through things at home, you're going to have some way, you're going to need a way to have an outlet to let some of those things out. You can't keep it all in. It's going to affect your ministry. It's going to affect the way you react to things in your personal life, your work life. So find some outlet, some support system that's going to help you to be able to handle those difficult situations, because you're not alone. You're not meant to operate alone. And sometimes you do have a wonderful husband that's there to be that support system. But when he's not, don't give up. God will put somebody there. You just have to keep your eyes open and your ears open for when God sends them, and not just go out there and just talk to just anybody.
So that really makes me think about when you said you thought that you were hiding it, that you were masking it really, really well, but you kind of weren't.
Yeah.
And even with that, the people, the congregation saw it, your family saw it, and you were being affected, like your body, your headaches, all of these things happening. But then on the flip side, it was interesting that you say that with the congregation seeing these things, at least two of them came to you and said, "Hey, you can confide in us. Hey, we see what's going on, like your headaches and different things that are affecting you,"
Hmm.
and that is quite interesting. So, what are some of the other good things? Because I would say that was absolutely a positive thing, that they saw you in those moments and did come and surround you and did, give you a landing place where you thought, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if they see that something's going on with us? It's going to tear apart the ministry. And they're like, no, like, we see you. It is okay. Like, care for yourself and that type of deal.
Hmm.
So were there any other, light, lights that you saw, or, positive things that happened that really helped pull you through?
Yes, I love being a minister's wife. I love being first lady of the church. Not that it put me on a higher plane than anybody, but it made more things available to me. I was able to meet people. I was able to network with people, to find out things that could help the people in my community. I was welcomed by people in the community that otherwise probably wouldn't have said anything to me if they hadn't known me, if I wasn't the pastor's wife. But because I was the pastor's wife, oh yeah, come in and talk,
Mm.
and just being able to be there. I had so many children that I was able to help, because I would do tutoring with the kids on in the afternoons, because we lived in the parsonage and it was right next to the church. So sometimes if they needed help, I was a teacher, they needed help. Okay, come over to the fellowship hall. I'll tutor you. I'll do whatever I can. And it gave me an avenue to be able to help so many more people than I could prior to me being a pastor's wife, because I was an introvert. I was completely to myself. And having this designation allowed me to reach out, because I was supposed to reach out in my mind. And so I had to kind of force myself, okay, get out there, be visible, do things. But it became natural for me. It became something I look forward to. I love going and serving meals to the homeless. I love going and working in the homeless shelter with the kids when we were in Louisville, Kentucky. I love doing things for people, and to see the joy on someone's face when you just come by to check on them, they say, "Oh, the pastor's wife came by to check," and it's like, okay, this brightens their day because these people probably, I don't know, but they probably pedestalized the preacher and the preacher's wife like I did when I was growing up. So
Right.
for them, I was that representation of God that was coming down to see them, to recognize them, to say, you are important. So those moments were like the best moments for me, to be able to connect with so many people and to positively affect their lives. It and just thinking, I'm just thinking back to our first congregation up until the last one that we were at. I still have people that were in all those congregations that reach out to me, that follow me on Facebook, that
Wow.
support me. Um, Even during the time when last year, and it's almost a year ago, when my ex-husband passed away, these people reached out to me, even though I wasn't the current wife. They reached out to me because they knew we had been together so long and that we had some connections, even though we ended on a bad note at the time. But they still reached out to me as if I was part of their family, because even today they still treat me as if I'm part of their family. So being a part of the ministry was the bright point of being a pastor's wife, because it allowed me to show God to so many people in so many different ways, whether it was cooking for someone or helping somebody's child to study, or just listening to somebody or praying with them or singing a song. Sometimes they be like, baby girl, I had this one lady, we call her Aunt May, or Mama May. I call her Mama May, and she calls me baby girl. And she'll say, baby girl, come over here and sing one of them songs for me. And just to
Oh,
see her face light up, even today, if I stop by and just say, Mama May, how you doing? You gonna sing for me? That warms my heart. Those are the joyous times about being a pastor's wife, is the connections that you make.
I love that. So the scripture comes to mind that says all things work together for the good. Because
Yes,
even with all the things that you went through, it really gave you the avenues for ministry. It gave you
yes,
the avenues to be the hands and feet of God. So
yes,
that is absolutely awesome. And I'm sure it continues even today, even though you're not in that marriage any longer.
yes.
So, last question as we wrap up.
Mhm.
So, with all the preachers' wives, how do you see this as being a tool, or how do you think it will help other pastors and then other pastors' wives?
um, I hadn't even thought about the pastor's aspect until now, but um, speaking from the viewpoint of a pastor's wife, when I began the ministry with my husband, I had so many questions about what to expect, what how to handle situations, what if this happens, what else could happen that I don't know, that might come at me, and um, I didn't have anybody to turn to. I didn't have anybody that I, could talk to. My mom, she was a minister's wife. My dad was a pastor at the time, but he was a newly formed pastor, so she was kind of going through the same things that I would be going through, and I just didn't have that outlet. I didn't have somebody that resource. So I think this anthology will be a great help for those young ladies or older ladies who are just starting in the ministry with their husbands, to understand, okay, these are some of the things that we went through, and this is how we handle them. It may not work exactly the same way for you, but it's something in this, within these pages, that you might can glean from and say, okay, you know what? I can take this information and I can apply it to what's going on now. Or it may be something that will give them insight on something that is to come. So when they see it happening, they can recognize and say, oh, I remember that pastor's wife wrote about this in the anthology. I remember how she handled, let me govern myself accordingly. So it can
Right.
give them like that heads up on some things, and it can give them some support on some things that they are already experiencing. As far as the pastors, I think it will give them insight on what it's like to be the support. A lot of times, the pastors' wives are just treated like, okay, we're children.
Mm.
I can recall being in the room full of pastors because my husband didn't want me to not be around him. So a lot of times when he was in the rooms with the pastors, I was like right close to him, and um, and the women were treated like the pastors were treated like kings. The
Mm.
women were treated like, okay, you're subjects. And that was fine because I was a subject to God. That's how I felt. But I think this book will give the pastors an insight as to how we women feel and how beneficial we can be if they just, listen. Now you have some pastors that are totally supportive of their wives, and they support the ministries of their wives, because sometimes the ministries are different, and they support the ministries of the wives, and that is wonderful. And those type of stories will be in the book as well, and that will give them encouragement. And it would also be a beacon to other pastors as to how they can be more supportive of their wife and the things that she's going through and the things that she wants to do within her own ministry.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melanie. This has been a great interview, and thank you for all of your insight and courage and sharing. This has really, really been awesome. And I so much look forward to reading and hearing more of your story in All the Preacher's Wives anthology.
Thank you. I'm so
All
excited.
right. Well, you have a nice rest of your day, and we will
Thank
talk
you
to you
too.
soon.
Thank you, you too.
All righty. Bye bye.